Welcome. You're tuned to the Urban Affairs program. It's time to get up for Urban Perspectives with your host, Pete Rhodes.
Welcome. You're watching Urban Perspectives. I'm your host, Pete Rhodes. This edition of Urban Perspectives is sponsored in part by BMAnetworks.com. On this edition, we will spotlight banking, law, and politics through the eyes of three outstanding individuals who have risen to leadership in these respective professions. Join us as we discuss these industries with influence and how they affect our daily lives and our communities here on Urban Perspectives. Banking is central to development of businesses and communities. My first guest oversees regulatory compliance of our banking systems in Minnesota. She brings 30 years of banking experience and community advocacy as Senior Vice President for Community Development, Outreach, and Public Affairs at the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis. I'm pleased to welcome Dorothy Bridges to Urban Perspectives. How are you doing, Dorothy?
I'm doing well, Pete. Thank you.
I am so glad to have you here. You know, we first got a chance to meet when you were back at Franklin Bank.
Yes. That's a few years ago.
That's a few years ago. So thanks for being here with us. So I guess what I'd like to know, and a lot of folks out there as well would like to know, is what exactly does the Federal Reserve Bank do for everybody and for our banking systems in particular?
Yeah, I get that question a lot. Well, you know, Federal Reserve banks and the Federal Reserve System, it was really put into law by Congress in 1913. And it's designed to really focus on monetary policy, the payment system, regulatory and examination process, supervision and regulation for our nation's banking system. Monetary policy being a very, very important piece. So when you hear people talk about inflation rate and what the workforce is doing and the labor markets are doing, that's all a part of the conversation at our Federal Reserve Bank Board of Governors and the presidents of the 12 different Federal Reserve Banks. So the way Federal Reserve Bank is structured, you have a Board of Governors that's housed in Washington, D.C., and then you have 12 Federal Reserve Banks across the country. And so we are the central bank for the United States. And that means that we're pretty much a banker's bank. We don't do retail banking for customers like you and I, but we oversee a lot of the activities that we as consumers appreciate. So when you're plugging in that debit card at an ATM or using the debit card to make purchases, we sort of have a role in the payment system that processes that transaction for you to ensure that it's safe and secure.
So what is your mission now over there? I knew what you were as president of Franklin Bank, but now as the Senior Vice President of Community Development, Outreach, and Public Affairs for the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis, what exactly are you doing in our communities now?
Well, as the Senior Vice President over these three departments, my personal mission is to ensure that we elevate the public's awareness about and understanding about the role of the Federal Reserve in the daily lives of our individuals. In the Community Development Department, we do a lot of convening of intermediaries and stakeholders who really has a focus, who have focuses on low to moderate income communities and what's happening in the lives of low to moderate income individuals. And so to advance economic growth in these communities is a vital mission of ours. In public affairs, what we try to do is share information to help improve the awareness of the Federal Reserve Bank. And then in our regional outreach, we go out and we visit one-on-one or in small group sessions to gather economic intelligence about how economic decisions that are made by policymakers are impacting individuals in their local communities.
That's a lot of work.
It is.
It's a lot of work.
It is, but I enjoy it.
Yeah. So, you know, being involved in the community, I know is really important to you, and it has been over the years. And when you look at the Federal Reserve Bank and, for instance, the Community Reinvestment Fund, how does that, do you oversee that, and how does that help affect leveraging, making the field kind of more level for accessing capital for businesses and other scenarios? Sure.
So you mentioned Community Reinvestment Fund. I'm understanding it to mean the Community Reinvestment Act, which is a regulatory statute It is vitally important to have a regulation like the Community Reinvestment Act. It really does encourage banks and other financial service providers to really provide services and products to people in low to moderate income communities to ensure that you're serving all of your community, not just that portion where you think you're going to earn the most dollars or make the better profits or to have the most quality loans. It is place-based in nature. So it focuses on certain census tracts to ensure that you're lending in those areas in an equitable manner, to also ensure that you're providing services such as investment or deposit services and any other services that you would normally offer to other parts of your market.
Now, coming out of community banks, how important are community banks in the scheme of things?
I think community banks are vitally important. These are the people that are very localized. They're on the ground in their particular communities, and they have a single market in most cases. And so they probably know these local communities a lot better than the larger institutions might. Now, there is a place for both, but for community banks, I think they have their fingers on the pulse of what's actually happening. So they know the businesses, they know the people who are running those businesses, and so they have a more interpersonal relationship with those individuals. So I think community banks, they do their jobs very well.
Well, you're doing a fantastic job there. I know you're in the community. There are a lot of scenarios that we will see you in as you move forward. And so I just want to thank you so much for coming here and being with us today.
Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity to visit.
Dorothy Bridges here with us on Urban Perspectives. Up next, we speak with an attorney, a law professor, and the youngest and the first African-American appointed to the Hennepin County bench. I talk with Judge Pam Alexander next on Urban Perspectives. Welcome back to Urban Perspectives. Governor Mark Dayton stated throughout her career, "My next guest has demonstrated courage and commitment to justice for all people. She is a member of the Minnesota Supreme Court Equal Fairness in Court Committees, an adjunct law professor, and newly appointed district court judge for Minnesota's 4th District." Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the judge. Please welcome Judge Pam Alexander. How are you doing?
Good morning.
Great, great. Glad to have you here. You know, we just want to get right into what we were talking about for you. And when did you really realize, Pam, that, Judge, shall I say, that you were going to be in this field of law?
When I was 12 years old, I was a witness to the rape of my best friend, which was the first time I'd ever been to court. The first time I ever saw real lawyers, real judges, real court personnel, and I was fascinated by the process. And then I decided, you know, I'm going to set that as a goal. But after that, I started looking around my community, and I didn't see too many lawyers that looked like me. I didn't see that many lawyers of color and even fewer women, so I decided that this was something that I really, really wanted to do.
Now, in the era of perceived injustice in many communities, what is your mission as a judge to help dispense fair and equitable rulings?
Well, you know, not only when people come into my courtroom do I want them to get fair and equal treatment, but I want them to get fair and equal treatment across the state. So because of that, I sat on the Minnesota Racial Bias Task Force, which we did in 1990, which issued 87 recommendations to the courts statewide to make sure that people were actually emitting justice, doing the right thing. And so those 87 recommendations are still being implemented right now ahead of the criminal section. The criminal section of that report did talk about all the areas that we see mostly people in our community at, and so I wanted to be sure that judges statewide, not just my court, but everybody, emits equal and fair justice standard.
How do you keep up with that? I mean, do you kind of keep an eye on it?
No, I still serve on that committee, and I serve on the Minnesota Supreme Court Equal Fairness Committee, and that committee not only looks at the Racial Fairness Task Force report, but the Gender Fairness Task report and the American Disabilities Act, and so we look at all areas to make sure all people are treated fairly.
How rewarding has this career been for you, and would you recommend it for others?
I certainly would recommend it for anybody. Being learned in the law is something I think all people should be, especially people in communities of color. African Americans, Native Americans have actually shaped the Constitution in this country, and people should know that, and they should know how their history intersects with the law. And I think anybody who has that skill will not only be able to help themselves, but will also be able to help others.
I think it's just an interesting field, and just the wording and the reading of law is just really a beautifully structured piece, I think.
Well, it is, but you also have to understand it, because sometimes we try to make it so everybody can understand it.
Exactly.
Because, you know, we have to have like little lawyer language so that you all will keep hiring us. But the difference is, though, somebody has to be able to interpret that for you. And really, it is plain English. It's plain what you need to know to get along in life. Law affects you in every area that you're in, and you need to know what that's going to do to you going forward. Lawyers can help you do that, but you can also help yourself by learning that yourself.
What is it that you do as a district court judge?
Well, right now I serve as what we call the team leader for our property drug team. So we handle 65% of all the felonies that come into Hennepin County. But as you know, Pete, I've been a judge for a long time, and I was the first African-American woman judge to ever be appointed in the state of Minnesota in 1983 when I was appointed by Governor Perpich.
Yes.
Then I left in 2008 after 25 years, and I headed the Minnesota Council on Crime and Justice.
Okay.
Then I went back to the bench, being reappointed by Governor Mark Dayton in 2013. So I've served in the criminal area, civil area, family, and I was a chief judge of the juvenile court for a number of years, which really is a court I'm going to get back to. So hopefully I'll get back to that in the next year or two.
With all that work in the justice system and the respect that you have, how do you or how does it play with other judges in helping to influence how they rule?
Well, you know, I do spend a lot of my time training new judges. I do spend a lot of time talking about policy, administration of justice to judges statewide, not only in Hennepin County. The good part about having been around for a long time is that people do look to you for your experience and wisdom that you've had over time. I've been involved in the system for now almost 40 years, and so I am called upon quite often to talk about what are the issues. One of the biggest issues we're looking at now is the whole idea of implicit bias. What does that do? Our judges unconsciously biased and not knowing it. So we're working on just those specific issues on not only the Hennepin County Equal Justice Committee, which I serve on, but the statewide committee as well. We're also talking about that nationally, and I'm on a couple committees for that as well.
You do a fantastic job, Judge Pam Alexander. I'm so happy to know you, so happy that you're a part of the judicial system here in the state of Minnesota, and we wish you all the best moving forward.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me.
Judge Pam Alexander, thank you.
Thank you.
Weekly here on Urban Perspectives, we present Shining Stars, highlighting people, places, and events that contribute to the vibrancy of the urban community. Our shining star this week is the former Miss Minneapolis, a troop leader for the Girl Scouts of America and a budding broadcast journalist. She's an advocate and role model for the development of young girls in our communities. Let's take a look at our shining star, Charity Bess.
My name is Charity Bess, and I'm a school specialist at Girl Scouts of River Valleys. Channel 4, WCCO, was looking for a news apprentice. I thought it would be a great opportunity to learn some trade skills of working in one of the best newsrooms in the country. And I interviewed and I got the job. It was really, really fascinating to be in the newsroom and see how news breaks and to see the behind the scenes of it. And as an apprentice for production, I got a chance to work with executive producers. I got a chance to work with the reporters on stories, and I kind of wrote my own versions, and it was a self-teaching experience, but it was one of the best experiences I've had thus far in my career. My advice to anybody who's interested in the media would definitely be to do your research and know your craft. It's very important that you understand what you're getting into. I got involved in the pageant system here, which is the international pageant system. And that pageant, it focuses on women who strive in their community to make it basically a better place. So I applied for it, got the title of Miss Maple Grove in 2009, and then a couple of years later, actually got fourth runner-up there. Then a couple of years later, I tried out again as Miss Minneapolis, and then I actually won the title. But I did that through the Girl Scouts, because I had a mentor when I was younger, and I felt the way that I could give back to people in the community, people in my community, was to be a mentor for them, because I'd had so many important mentors that had really helped pave the way for me and show me the positive side of life. So I wanted to do that for young inner city girls in North Minneapolis, and so I signed up to become a troop leader. Through that work, I've been able to make a difference and mentor girls, and it's really important for me to do that because I want to see them grow up to be really positive, strong young women. Hi, I'm Charity Bess, and you're watching Urban Perspectives.
Thanks, Charity. A little known fact about my next guest is she's a professional actor who has appeared in St. Paul on Penumbra Theater's stage, and she's a producer of television and radio commercial. Now she's a Ramsey County Commissioner. I want you to meet Toni Carter next on Urban Perspectives. My next guest is all about community as co-chair of the Minnesota Human Services Performance Council and Ramsey Juvenile Detention Stakeholder Committee, as well as the Met Council Corridor Management Committee. Her lifelong mission is to work on behalf of stakeholders in her community. Please welcome 4th District Commissioner Toni Carter.
Thank you.
How are you doing this morning?
Well, I'm fine. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, it is just a pleasure to have you here. You've been doing great work in our communities, and we appreciate that so much, because I see you over here in Minneapolis as well as doing the hard work that you're doing over in St. Paul.
Yeah, community doesn't stop at the river.
Exactly. What is the job of the county commissioner for the district that you serve?
Thank you. I serve 4th District, which starts at the river in Minneapolis and ends around Rice Street in St. Paul, points north and south. But as a county commissioner, I serve the entire county.
Yeah.
And my role as a commissioner is to work with 6 others who form the governance body for all of the work that Ramsey County does. So we set the budget, we set the strategic plan for the county. The county is a very important factor in all of our lives. You know, we do things such as public health, controlling outbreaks, should there be concern in our community for disease and things of that sort. We also have responsibility for juvenile services and adult services in detention and probation. The county has a role in economic development, the transit that we have been fortunate enough to create along University Avenue has been a part of the county's work over the long term. There are so many things that counties do in all of our lives. Workforce development, I could go on and on. A very important part of our work is just making certain that we all have an enhanced quality of life.
Do you ever get a chance to go home?
Yeah, I do. I live in my district.
You live in the district, so you go home. You know, how was it to you, Commissioner Carter, to be the first African American commissioner on the county board there? I remember when you first were elected. What did it feel like to you, and what kind of, not pressures, but things that you have to do to make sure that you represent fairly?
First of all, it's an awesome responsibility to be a county commissioner and to have the faith of community to do this work that's so important. Secondly, as the first county commissioner, African American county commissioner in the state of Minnesota, I feel responsible to represent our people well, and that means everybody. You know, bringing a voice to the county that is the voice of African American community is extremely important to me, because it's about making certain that our communities are able to achieve positive outcomes. Again, that's for everybody. But as we know, there's so many disparities across communities of color, and in particular African American communities. So I feel the responsibility of bringing that voice, that representation, and of course the community along with me as stakeholders as I do this work.
How important is it for the community to be involved with you and others to help guide that work and to be sure that that input is there?
Well, again, I think counties have a lot to do with creating healthy communities, and having a voice of the community is absolutely essential in doing that. So again, as the first African American member of a county board in Minnesota, I feel the responsibility of making certain that I'm in touch, I'm visible, and not only am I visible in the community, but that the community is visible and impactful in our work.
Now, you've worked very hard on getting that train to come over and provide transportation for that community. As a transit advocate, what do you want transit to do for our communities?
Well, first of all, of course, transportation is critical in all of our lives. And believe it or not, everybody doesn't have a car. And I think it's important that in a metropolitan area such as ours, people can realize that they can live productive lives and have access to locations for work, for fun, for all sorts of visiting without a car. So that's important. Secondly, it's important, of course, for economic development. And that's why the 3 stations were so important in our community, because these are nodes around which businesses, entertainment, around which life grows. So that's very important. It's important to have a walkable community so that we can be healthy, you know, and be able to bike and get to the kinds of amenities that we have. And it's simply important that we have work as well, and transit does create work and the opportunity to get there.
Now, what is your mission on the Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiatives Committee? I know that you've worked very hard to establish a couple of changes there. What were those quickly in the time?
Well, as you know, we've been able to reduce the number of young people who have to spend time in our detention centers. Now, that means that we are able to keep them in school. We're able to keep them drug-free. We're able to make certain that they stay offense-free during the time before they see a judge. And that's really important. If a child has, or a juvenile has not offended egregiously, that they're able to be with mentors, that they're able to grow positively in our community.
Commissioner Toni Carter, you do a fantastic job.
Thank you so much.
On your side of the river and ours. So thank you for coming here and being a part of Urban Perspectives today.
Thank you. Blessings to you.
Yeah, amen. Thank you for watching Urban Perspectives. I'd like to thank my guests, Dorothy Bridges, Judge Pam Alexander, and Commissioner Toni Carter, our shining star, Charity Bess, and most importantly, I want to thank you, the audience, for getting up with Urban Perspectives. And don't forget, you can like us on our Facebook page, where you can also link to previous broadcasts. And remember, there are positive things that are happening in our cities, and you can see them right here on Urban Perspectives. Now enjoy the photos of the week featuring the National Association of Black Journalists Board reception. I'm Pete Rhodes, and I'll see you next week.